just to get your morning kicked off and going. I hope everyone is already having a great morning. If you're not having a great morning as of yet, declare that the rest of your day is going to be great. Make a powerful faith confession and declare that I am going to have a great day because this is the day that the Lord has made, and certainly we shall rejoice and be glad in it. Again, I want to welcome all of you uh, who have joined us, some of you who are joining us for the very first time. Um, I'm delighted that you've popped in on us this morning. And just to give you a little bit of a disclaimer, let you know what this platform is all about. This is not necessarily a preaching platform. Tish H, good morning. Minister Judy Diamond, good morning to you. But this is a platform wherein I just take the time to share some practical wisdom for daily living. Of course, all of the principles that I try to share are biblically based. I try to make sure that everything that I share lines up with the Word of God. Deacon Ron Morton, good morning to you. I'm not going to delay in getting into what I want to share with you today. Yesterday, I started discussing with you and encouraging you to fight to get fit. And I want to continue in that line of discussion today. Again, for those of you that are joining us for the very first time, you are certainly welcome to join in on the chat. Put your comments in there. We just ask that everyone be respectful of one another's comments. And then certainly we ask that you would be respectful of your host. All right. But again, here on Morning Mocha, we're just one big happy family, and we want you to feel welcome as you come in and join in on the discussion, on the conversation. Again, our theme this week, and I'm going to be staying with this theme the entire week: fight to get fit. Fight to get fit. Yesterday, I began talking to you about the importance of mental fitness and how mental fitness is achieved through mental maintenance. I talked to you about how important it is to exercise your brain intentionally by engaging your mind through intellectual activities such as reading. Now, again, I know some of you probably just popped in and you weren't in on yesterday's discussion. And before you jump back off, hang with me. You're going to see how this will bless you and how important it is for you to hear what I'm sharing with you today. You've got to be intentional about engaging yourself in intellectual activities such as reading, such as writing, playing word games, and even solving word puzzles. Those are intellectual activities that will benefit you greatly as it pertains to your mental maintenance. All of these activities are very instrumental in terms of helping you to remain intellectually sharp. Some of the effects of engaging in these activities are your vocabulary expands. Now, who doesn't need to expand their vocabulary? I think all of us could benefit from expanding our vocabularies. Y'all, Lady Ann just popped in. I want to take the time to acknowledge Lady Ann is in the house. Yes, she gets that special recognition no matter where I am in the discussion, because that's my partner in ministry, my partner in life, my boo, my girl, my wife, my lady. She's all that. So I want to acknowledge her each and every time she pops in with us. I don't take it for granted that just because she's my wife, she's going to automatically come on and listen every morning. But it says something that if my wife wants to listen, I must be doing something right. But again, as I was saying, that we all can benefit from expanding our vocabularies. When we play these games or engage these games or engage in these intellectual mind activities, your communication skills tend to improve. You know, it only stands to reason that your communication skills will improve since you are expanding your vocabulary. Your comprehension of things increase. because you have a broader range of knowledge. And when you hear certain things, you better know and understand. You know better. I'm not saying you better know like this is what you got to do, but you know better how to process certain things, how to process certain information, how to comprehend certain things. Your communication skills improve and your writing skills improve. And that can be very, very beneficial. You'd be surprised the many opportunities that a person can gain just from having great writing skills. Writers are needed much more than people can ever imagine. And companies will employ good or great writers. Now, in that respect, I would strongly suggest that you go back to school if that's something that you really aspire to do. Go back to school, take some classes, and get a degree in writing. Some of you have shut me down already because you're saying to yourself, "Oh man, no, I'm too old to be going back to school." Well, I don't agree with that. If you're not too old to think, you're not too old to go back to school. Now, you may not feel like going back to school. And of course, if you're going to go back to school, there must be some motivation for you to go back to school, if it's nothing more than for self-improvement. But you can increase your personal value when you have papers that says that you've done the work, you've disciplined yourself, you've gone through the process, you've completed studies, and you've proven through an academic institution that you are capable of completing certain tasks, such as getting through an entire course. That says something to potential employers. It puts you in a better position when people know and can see, and you demonstrate that you have excellent writing skills. They become a little bit more interested in you than in the next person who may not possess the skills that you have in terms of communicating and in terms of writing. These activities that I just suggested to you help to maintain your cognitive sharpness. And that word cognitive really refers to your ability to think and to process things. Now, that may sound very simple to some people. What do you mean, your ability to think or process things? Believe it or not, there are a great number of people who have a difficult time really intentionally thinking and processing things to bring about clarity and understanding. And a lot of times it's only because they don't intentionally exercise their brain, utilize their minds, take their thoughts deeper than surface level, seek out information that they are not necessarily familiar with, expand their minds and expand their thinking. If you don't use your mind, if you don't exercise your brain, if you don't intentionally and actively think on purpose, you're going to somewhat jeopardize or cause that skill to become diminished. It's a fact. Now, we're already up against something in terms of our cognitive abilities, in that they diminish over time and as we get older automatically. But we do have the ability to slow the process of how fast they diminish simply by continuously keeping our brains, our minds active intentionally, not just running on autopilot. Now, of course, to a great degree, all of us run on autopilot, but some more so than others. Think about this. When you're sitting and watching a television show, a movie, a television program, or whatever, your mind is really on autopilot. You're not sitting in front of that television trying to think deeply. Now, I know some of you might say, well, I do, Bishop, because those are the kind of movies I watch. You know, I watch mysteries and thrillers and all of that. No, that's more entertaining to you than challenging to you. You know, I'm talking about intentionally using your brain to collect information, process that information, and utilize that information to your good or to your advantage, however you want to look at it. And you have to be very intentional, and you just can't run on autopilot if your thinking is going to be most beneficial to you. And so these are the ways we maintain our brains, we exercise our brains, we maintain our mental health. But there's another aspect of mental maintenance that we cannot ignore, and that is the mental maintenance that is associated with your mental fitness. Mental fitness is another one of those subject matters that most of us push back on. Many of us hear the phrase mental fitness or mental health, and we immediately think crazy. No, that's not what I'm suggesting here. And you need to reprogram yourself to wherein every time you hear the word mental health or mental fitness, it's not referring to someone who is what we deem as crazy, out of their minds, living beyond the realm of reality, not even truly fully aware of their existence, not being able to function on certain levels or with any sense of normality. That's not what I'm referring to. You got to be aware of the fact that there are a number of things that can adversely affect your mental health or your mental fitness. Things such as mental fatigue. Mental fatigue can be the worst kind of fatigue because of how it affects your overall ability to function. Mental fatigue is most often brought on by mental overload, having to process too much at any given time. Mental fatigue can be and often is at the root of physical fatigue. You can't think clearly. Yet it's difficult to mentally recess, if you would, for the sake of simply getting much needed rest. You suffer from sleep deprivation because even when you attempt to lay down and sleep, you find that your mind continues to race because your mind is on overload. Is there anybody who's ever experienced that? You become mentally fatigued. Your mind is on overload. You can't seem to shut it down at any time. And that mental fatigue often leads to physical fatigue. When you're suffering from mental fatigue, it's because you're just trying to process too much. You can't think clearly. It seems as though you are always in a mental fog. You go to bed thinking about work. You can't sleep because you're mentally trying to resolve family matters, financial matters, health concerns, even thinking about social matters that you want to make sure are handled with precision and perfection. All of this is going through your minds. And it is affecting you adversely to wherein you can't perform at your optimum levels. It seems as though you can't even do the simple things, the things that you should be able to do without even thinking about it. How about this? You have so much on your mind. You get in your car and you start to a certain destination. Only part of the way there, you momentarily forget where you're going. I've done that at times. Had so much on my mind, so much I was dealing with. Started out for one place, and then I don't realize that I'm not going in the direction I should be going until I recognize I just missed an exit. I'm talking about somewhere that I go on a regular basis. There have been times wherein I left my home on my way to the office at the church. How many times have I done that? I can't even begin to tell you. But in the process of traveling to the church, I missed going or taking the exit I should. Instead of getting off on 435, going on 435 north to Bannister Road, I find myself traveling north on 71. And all of a sudden, I realize, wait a minute, I'm going to the church. And so I have to quickly take the Bannister exit and get off on Bannister and finally get back on track, going to where I intended to go. Some of that kind of thing happens due to mental fatigue. Mental fatigue can be the result of unmanaged stress. Unmanaged stress adversely affects you both mentally and emotionally. I mean, think about that. You're not managing your stress like you should. You're not able to process things like you should. And before you know it, the people around you become victimized by your bad emotional disposition. It can affect you. That mental fatigue, you start snapping on people for no reason at all. And really in your mind, you really thinking to yourself, I don't know why I'm doing this. You know, if you're a person of integrity, when you finally realize what you've done in those cases, you wind up doing a whole lot of apologizing. You're carrying too much. You're on mental overload. That happens by taking on responsibilities that become overwhelming for you, and they create stresses that affect you mentally and emotionally. You know, sometimes in the midst of us wanting to be kind and help others, we've got to exercise enough wisdom to put some boundaries on the help and put a limit to what extent that we're willing to go in order to help another person in their situation. I think I talked about this last week, or maybe it was a few days ago or whatever. But sometimes we take on other people's problems and we find ourselves carrying more of the weight of their problem than that person is themselves. That doesn't make any sense. And really, what was once a peaceful, normal, free-flowing life for you has now become complicated with someone else's problems, with someone else's burdens, with someone else's weight. Now, I'm not by any means suggesting that we should lose all sense of compassion wherein we no longer have any desire to help other people. But there has to be a boundary. There has to be a balance. There has to be some wisdom in your approach. Sometime, for the sake of your own well-being, it is absolutely necessary for you to tell some people no. Wow. Now, I know that can be difficult for some people to tell other people no, because too many of us live our lives seeking or desiring the approval of other people. And some people feel obligated or even now held hostage to the influence of other people or how we want to impress other people, how we feel we have a need to have that person be so involved in our own lives. Okay, think about this. I mentioned just a few minutes ago that some of this mental fatigue and stress is brought on by taking on responsibilities that eventually become overwhelming. Okay. There are a lot of parents who have become grandparents by reason of their children, quite naturally, by reason of their children having children. But here's my point. Their children have children. And then when they have children, they take your grandchildren and dump their grandchildren on you while they go on and live their lives freely. And they expect for you to be at the ready to be responsible for taking care of, and this is how they'll put it, your grandchildren whenever they want to be footloose and fancy free. And if you say no, there's a problem. Never mind what you had planned. Never mind the fact that you still have a full-time job. Never mind the fact that every now and then you just want some downtime yourself. And some of these parents of the grandchildren don't ask their parents if they can help out. They'll insist that their parents help out. They will inform the parent what's required of them. Look, we got a trip planned and we're going out of town, and so y'all gonna need to watch the kids while we gone. Really? Really? How about asking me what my schedule is going to be like during this week or that week? Now, I'm not saying about me personally, because really, Lady Ann and myself don't really have that issue, but we know people who do. And instead of being asked, they're being instructed. Well, we've already planned this trip. We can't lose this money. Where else they gonna stay? Oh, so you're just gonna let your grandchildren? Oh, they emphasize that thing. You're just gonna let your grandchildren go neglected? No, it's not you who's doing the neglecting. It's the parent, not the grandparent. It's the parent. Tisha Hillman, I agree. There's power in the word no. And there are times when you need to utilize that power for the sake of your own mental maintenance and well-being. You can say, no to certain situations. And when you're saying no to certain situations, you are actually saying yes to your wholeness and to your well-being. Having these responsibilities put on you that you weren't expecting, that's a problem. And it can cause great stress, especially if your grandchildren happen to be very, very active, very, very busy, and it's more than one. You have to feed them, care for them, transport them to the places that they're expected to be at any given time. You have to become that parent all over again. Am I talking to anybody? Is this resonating with anybody? These kind of situations can create that kind of stress that will affect you both mentally and emotionally. Another thing that can cause mental fatigue is stress that is created by remaining in an unpleasant situation. Situations that you know are mentally and emotionally damaging to you. And you're not taking any measures to get help to resolve your issue. Listen, if that situation goes unaddressed for extended periods of time, it can eventually affect your mental health. It can. Sometimes we become too dismissive in terms of dealing with these matters. We try to pretend as though, hey, I'm so strong and it'll never affect me like that. And before you know it, you're unraveling at the edges and eventually becoming totally mentally and emotionally unraveled. And you're wondering why? It's because of these unaddressed issues. They're damaging. They can affect your mental health. Now, your mental health can also become jeopardized by a traumatic experience occurring in your life. And I certainly don't want to downplay this. Not by any means, not by any stretch of the imagination. Traumatic experiences such as the death of a family member, the death of a very close family member, the death of a very close friend. I'm telling you, if you don't take the time to grieve properly, or if you somehow convince yourself that you're okay when you're really not okay, it can have long-term effects on you. That can be very problematic. One of the things as a pastor that I've learned over the years to stop telling people, initially when I first started to minister to people, I would tell them to be strong when they would lose a family member. Be strong. I stopped telling people to be strong. As a matter of fact, I started telling people, I now tell people, you don't have to be strong. Grieve, cry, holler if you must. Do whatever you can to process what you are feeling. It is so very necessary. And furthermore, I tell people that there is no expiration date on grieving. Grieving is an ongoing process. My dad literally passed away. It's been 20 years now. 20 years since he's been gone. And I have moments still, depending on certain situation, that wherein, depending on what's occurring at the time, I begin to think about him. I begin to miss him. And before I know it, I have tears rolling down my face. 20 years later. Now, some ultra spiritual people will say, well, that's crazy. No, it's not. I'm not suggesting that the pain today is as intense as it was when he first passed away. But neither am I denying that every now and then I am still affected by the loss of his presence. To bring it more recently, many of you know that in 2019, I lost my mini-me. Tia was my mini-me. That was my little twin. That was my baby, my girl. And I can tell you, the way I processed her passing, I made sure that I took the time and didn't try to distract myself by staying busy. I just shared this with someone the other day. After the passing of Tia, I literally stayed in my pajamas for 7 weeks. Only coming out occasionally because our granddaughter, Taylor, had a basketball game. That's the only thing that I was really wanting to leave the house for. Y'all remember, those of you that are members of Canaan, I didn't show up at Canaan for 7 weeks. I got comfortable in my man cave. Now, please understand, I wasn't balled up, curled up in the corner in a fetal position, rocking and crying. No, I took every day, one day at a time. When I felt a little heaviness, I would release some of that heaviness through my tears. Sometimes I would sit here in my man cave and I would talk to my daughter and tell her how much I miss her. No, I wasn't crazy. No, I wasn't mentally ill. As a matter of fact, I was keeping myself from becoming mentally ill by taking the process to actually grieve the loss of my daughter. If people did come around me during that period of time, because, every now and then I would have family want to just come over and check on me, see how I was doing, I didn't avoid talking about Tia. I would laugh about the things that we laughed about. I would talk about her accomplishments. As a matter of fact, I probably would run my company away because everything that I talked about was Tia, 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 and more Tia. And if you didn't want to hear me talk about Tia, then don't come around me. That was my way of processing. My wife and I sometimes would sit and laugh about some of the things that Tia would do. Some of the things that Tia would say. Actually, she was my silly partner. If I could be silly with anybody, I enjoy being silly with Tia. It's a way to process. And believe it or not, that attributed to my mental maintenance, my emotional maintenance by me going through that process. And some people try to avoid that kind of thing. Their loved one passed away and they don't want to hear nothing about that person for almost forever and a day. And that's because they're not processing their grief. They're trying to dismiss or deny the reality of what has taken place. That is a traumatic experience. chronic illness, whether it be of you, the person, yourself rather, or a family member. Just as much applicable in Tia's situation. When she was going through her chronic illness, it was traumatic for me. You know, I was in disbelief. I can't believe my baby is going through this. But I processed it. I processed it through prayer. I processed it through meditation. I processed it through reading the word. I processed it through talking with my daughter. I processed it by being there for her as much as I could and helping to provide some support and even now some strength for her while she endured her situation. That can be traumatic. And you've got to have the tools necessary for handling those type of situations. On another level, sudden loss of income or loss of home. It can be a very traumatic experience. People literally not knowing how they're going to feed their families or support their families. You know, you're financially sustained one day, and all of a sudden you're informed that all of your income is about to go away. That can be a traumatic experience for some people because they think of all the loss that is associated with the loss of their livelihood. And I know there's some people who's viewing this right now who's been there. You've been in that type of situation. And some of you, if you were to be honest, you did a whole lot of praying and crying, and sometimes more crying than you did praying. It was stressful. It was traumatic. There were times you were by yourself. And you've heard yourself say on so many occasions, Lord, I don't know what I'm going to do. Glory to God. That can be very traumatic. Loss of home. I'm thinking about, I don't know how many of you have heard the news, but on last night, tornadoes ripped through parts of the South and the Southeast. New Orleans in particular, again, people living in a nice, comfortable home one moment, and within a matter of, I heard one guy say 5 minutes, their home was wiped out within 5 minutes. Might as well count everything as lost. That's a traumatic experience. And, you know, I know there are a lot of you that think yourselves to be very spiritual, and you might not agree with what I'm gonna say, but sometimes we can be too dismissive about what we are really thinking by saying stuff like, well, I'm just gonna put it in the hands of the Lord. Or telling someone else, well, you just need to put it in the hands of the Lord. What you don't understand is that even though you put certain things in the hands of the Lord, doesn't mean that you're not going to be affected in that moment, in that time, in that situation. And there is a process to healing, even when you submit things over to God, when you surrender things totally over to God. Most born-again believers, if they're really true to their faith, they know they must trust God in the worst of situations. But trusting God and declaring that I'm trusting God doesn't automatically and instantaneously heal your mental and emotional hurts. Let's just be real about it. As a matter of fact, there have been times that I've been mentally and emotionally hurt where I told God in the midst of my prayer, God, I'm hurting right now. I'm hurting right now. And you're just expressing yourself from your human side of life. And you would be amazed how that as well can help to bring about some mental and emotional stability when you make it a practice to trust God in the midst of your situation. Now, again, this all ties in to mental fitness. How about this? Sudden separation from a loved one. That can be a traumatic experience. What do you mean, Bishop? Maybe a loved one being sent to war or sent to prison. That can be a traumatic experience for loved ones, for you. And again, I know that I'm talking to someone who's viewing right now who's been through that type of situation, who would agree with me, who can testify. Yes, I've experienced that kind of separation, and it's not easy to deal with. So what do we do? How do we handle these traumatic experiences? How do we deal with it when we feel stress is coming on to the degree that it's jeopardizing our mental and emotional well-being? How do you, or you might be asking the question, how do I maintain my mental fitness or mental health? Well, I have a few ways that can happen. Number one, the first thing you need to do is admit you're having a problem. Don't worry about whether or not people are going to label you and call you crazy. You got to get to the point where that just doesn't matter anymore. You know, you got to get to the point where you almost have to say about that person, you don't matter that much in my life to where you can make me feel some kind of way by trying to imply that I might be crazy. But then in doing so, you got to know who you can admit that problem to. Everybody's not going to be as sympathetic with you as they should be. Everybody is not going to be in a position where they can empathize with you because they've never been where you are. They've never gone through what you may be going through at the time. So first thing, again, the way to maintain your mental and emotional health is by admitting you have a problem. Number two, by getting the help you need by engaging a professional. Wow. My African American brothers and sisters in the Lord, let me help you to understand that it is okay to sit down with a therapist, a psychologist, or a psychiatrist if necessary, depending on the level of your mental health being affected. Get some help. If you need help, get help. Going on social media is not getting help. It's just opening you up for more injury because people will talk crazy. And some people will purposely say things that will further push you over the edge. It is okay. Check with your insurance, your health insurance. See what they will and will not pay for. If you need that kind of help, get that kind of help. Number three, make adjustments in your life that would relieve you of your mental overload and stress. That goes back to simply telling people no. Deciding I'm not going to do that. Deciding I can no longer remain in this place, mentally, emotionally, or physically if need be. Got to make adjustments. Be willing to make adjustments. Now, I know there are a lot of people who are quite fearful of change. But when you find yourself in a bad situation, there's no time to be being fearful. There's no time for being fearful of change. You've got to make change or the adjustments necessary for the sake of your own mental and emotional well-being. Number four, being conscious of and selected about what you take in mentally. Some things must be mentally rejected before being mentally absorbed. Hey, that's the honest to goodness truth. And be aware of the fact that some things we can take in unconsciously and don't realize the effect those things are having on us until we're almost in too deep. Now, I know some of y'all gonna think I'm just being churchy, preachy, or over spiritual, but you better give it some kind of consideration here. You got to be careful what you're taking in and what you're watching on television. Man, I ain't watching no movies where they're highlighting demons and demonic spirits and all that. Sitting up here talking about I like scary movies, and what those movies are intended to do is to infiltrate your mind and your atmosphere with demonic spirits. Well, Bishop, I don't know if I believe that. Okay, so why is all that crazy stuff going on around you? All of a sudden, everybody in the house started acting a little weird, a little crazy, like they lost their mind. Y'all know I'm right about it. Next thing you know, you start calling me, talking about, I'm hearing things in my house. Yeah, because you're letting things in your house. You've got to be real careful. That's another reason why you need to monitor what your children watch on television and what they're listening to privately in their ears, on their headsets, in their headphones. They're listening to things that are influencing and conditioning their minds in a certain way. And they can become mentally and emotionally disturbed if you're not careful with monitoring what they are listening to. But you got to monitor what you're listening to and watching yourself. I agree, Tisha. Once again, evil spirits exist. People deny it though. They think it's entertainment. The thief comes not but to steal and to kill and to destroy. And he's not going to just come at you head on. He comes in a subtle way, slick, underhanded, really almost unnoticeable. And he loves to use the avenue or vehicle of entertainment to infiltrate your spirit and your space. Another thing you must do is discipline yourself to declutter your mind and remove some things off of your plate of responsibilities. Declutter, declutter, declutter. Declutter, declutter, declutter. Have you ever been in a room where there's so much junk in the room that you feel like you almost can't breathe? Can't take it. Now, some people, it don't bother them. Me, I can't stay in a room like that. I just absolutely cannot do it. It bothers me. Well, some of your minds are the same way. They're so cluttered that you can't think. Why? Because you're always taking in things, some of which are necessary, but others of which are very unnecessary. Y'all tell me something. Exactly what are you learning while you're strolling through all the posts that you see on social media? What are you learning? What are you gaining? And you know what? If you're not careful, you can find yourself staring at your screen, scrolling through stuff, reading trash, reading garbage, watching um, videos that have absolutely no value, but are simply trashing your mind and your spirit. That's all that's taking place. You can better utilize your time and your mind space by more so researching, reading, or even viewing things that are more positive and more productive. That's right, Sister Joyce. When we're on social media, we're looking for gossip. We're looking for gossip. The latest gossip. Whether it's in the celebrity community or in your immediate community. Just looking for gossip. And it's crazy. And you're wondering why you can't think. Your mind is cluttered. Declutter. Purge yourself of some of those things. Purge yourself of all of those things that are not productive. Some things I decided this years ago. I'm just not going to watch certain things on television. I'm just not going to do it. And sometimes I'm told, well, they're just presenting life. Well, there's certain sides of life that I don't want to see with regards to those things. I'm not going to take it in, because if you take it in too much, you become desensitized to it. And before you know it, it's creating a problem for you. Okay, so number one, admit you have a problem. Number two, get help you need by engaging a professional. Number three, make adjustments in your life that would relieve you of your mental overload and stress. Number four, be conscious and selective about what you take in mentally. Number five, discipline yourself to declutter your mind and to remove some things off of your plate of responsibilities. Some responsibilities that you've been given from some people, you simply need to give them back. Tell them, say, hey, you know what? I no longer can do this for you. Well, why? Because I don't have room on my plate to do it. Well, why not? Okay, let me just shoot it to you real straight. I don't want to do it anymore. I'm tired of doing it. It's putting me in a bad space, in a bad place. I'm decluttering. And so I'm giving your stuff back to you. Otherwise, it's just going to get thrown out. Now, number six, and I want you all to hear me very carefully on this. Aside from taking any substances, let me say that clearly, be they medicinal or otherwise, find ways to relax naturally. Now, it's important that you hear that, especially the wisdom with regards to taking substances. Because listen, taking substances can lead to other things that may make matters worse. So throw that one out the window. You don't need any pharmaceuticals. You don't need any herbs. Okay, let me say it straight for y'all because y'all will play crazy with me. You know, herbs are good for you, Pastor. Okay, no. You don't need any weed. You don't need any foreign substances. You just need to find a place and a time to relax. Yeah. If you have to, hey, listen, go get a massage. Relax yourself. Relax your mind. The seventh thing that I would suggest to you, and some of you are going to push back on this, but meditate on the Word of God. That can help to declutter some of that other mess that's up in your mind that's keeping you from being able to sleep at night. Meditate on the Word of God. You might just find the solution to your problem in the Word of God. Yes, I like that, Tisha. Relax, relate, release. Relax, relate, release. And you can certainly find relaxation, rest, and release in the Word of God. Don't believe me? Try it. Try it. And then finally, communing with the Spirit of God. Sometimes you just need to sit back and just allow the Spirit of God to minister to you. Hear his voice. Hear his voice above your own, above the voices that come with all of your problems. You know, hear the Spirit of the Lord above everything. Joyce, I agree. The Psalms are a great place to go to read and just to meditate and to reflect on what the psalmist is saying and understanding how what he is speaking and saying applies to your own life. So I'm challenging you to be very intentional with regards to applying these things that I'm sharing with you to your life. Be intentional about monitoring. Well, I didn't say that word quite right. Monitoring. There it is. I got it. Your mental health, your emotional health, and have a plan for your mental maintenance so that you might remain or even become mentally fit. And there's so much more that can be rolled out with regards to mental maintenance and mental fitness. But again, I think the main thing that I want you to embrace here and grasp is that if you're having some mental struggles, that doesn't mean that you are crazy. I think you may not be human if you never have any kind of mental struggles. And I think I mentioned last week, that a lot of us acknowledge that we're experiencing stress when we say things like, you're getting on my nerves. You're making me sick. You're bothering me. You're talking about the state of your mentality at that given time. And you're just looking at it now from a deeper perspective. And you're protecting yourself from your situation becoming very, very serious. Fight to get fit. Fight to get fit mentally. It will be worth the fight. You'll find yourself experiencing more of the joy of life and the peace of life, simply because you have done the work and performed the mental maintenance that you so desperately need. Do the work. It'll be worth your while. God bless you. That's all I have for you today. Hope it's been a blessing to you. I hope it has benefited you greatly. And if it has, share it with somebody else. Share it with someone else. And allow them to be blessed. Well, until this same time tomorrow morning, as I often say, my desire is that you have a blessed, wonderful, and even prosperous rest of your day. God bless.